But within that, we have a lot of flexibility. And what we're doing tonight is some people on our campus giving extra time to our athletic program, to you, in hopes that what we share tonight can be beneficial to you. In some cases, I remember from what Mr. Sears said the first time, in some cases, some things you may learn tonight, they may wind up helping somebody else. And you may be able to have an impact in a situation that influences somebody else's life in a huge way. So I want you to, one, be appreciative of the extra time that they're giving us and the material and the information they're giving us. And number two, just as important, I want to make sure that we show them the respect that we do anybody that we talk to, just like our coaches and people we compete against. So, Mr. Sears, appreciate your time.
Take a shortcut, Ralph. Thank y'all a lot for being here tonight. Even though you're told to be here, I still appreciate you being here. Dr. Nova's going to start. Renetta Johnson, counsel, will be here shortly. She's dealing with a counseling issue right now. Then I'll finish up talking about our program tonight. This is required by the NCAA of all athletes and their coaches. The NCAA talks a lot in their published papers to us as a college about our role and your role in coaches' roles. One of the things they emphasized a tremendous amount in 2018 and 2019 is whether you like it or not, you as student athletes, according to the NCAA, have an obligation as a type of person by your position as an athlete that other students look up to. And they expect us to talk to you and your coaches about sexual assault prevention and involvement when it is brought to your attention, because the NCAA feels like you're somebody as an athlete that other students look up to, and there's truth to that. So again, we're going to talk about different aspects of this, and again, I want you to realize, as you think about this, the reason we're talking to you is other students often look to athletes as a source of encouragement, as a source of knowledge. It's a peer they emulate, somebody they wish they could be or have been. Maybe an injury kept them from being an athlete this year or something. Maybe their grades knocked them down. But with that said, realize your importance in the topic of sexual assault. Dr. Nova?
Thank you, Mr. Sears. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight. My role tonight is to explain to you what our campus rules and regulations are, understand the framework for that, because I know as athletes and as smart men and women, the more you know, the better decisions you can make, correct? If you know the rules of a sport, you're going to make good decisions and you know how to perform and stay within those rules. If you don't know the rules, then you might violate them and not be aware that you're violating. And I promise you that at least half the people in this room tonight, if you pay attention, when you get through with what you hear, you will know at least one thing you did not know when you got here tonight. And that might make a difference in you choosing the right path or the wrong path, or helping your friend choose the right path or the wrong path, or perhaps it gives you the ability to step in after the fact to know what to do and where to go from there. So, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Title IX. How many of you have heard of Title IX? Raise your hands a little bit higher because I don't see one yet. Title IX. Okay? So here's what Title IX is. It's a federal statute requires colleges to educate, investigate, report, and prosecute any and all forms of sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, and other related issues. Now, Title IX, interestingly enough, was enacted 40 years ago. When it was first enacted, it wasn't deemed by the Congress who enacted it to be something that colleges would deal with in these issues. Does anybody know what it was dealing with? Athletics. The first purpose of Title IX was to equalize the athletic playing field for men and women in this country. And what the federal government said was, if you're an educational institution which accepts federal dollars, and every school does, right? Anybody here have a student loan? That comes from the federal government. So every school takes federal dollars. There's only about 2 colleges in the country that do not accept federal money. Every other college has to comply with Title IX. And Title IX has been wildly effective for that original purpose. When it was enacted 40 years ago, there were about 300,000 young women playing sports in high schools. Today, there's over 4 million. And Title IX is credited with the equality of funding to allow more and more athletic programs for both men and women. So that's the background about Title IX. Title IX has become more than that. And now what it says is that we have to make sure that our policies and our conduct on this campus is fair and equal to men and women. And no one can be treated differently because of their gender. And you'll see as we go through this what it basically comes down now for the purpose of this presentation. And what you need to know about tonight is that colleges are increasingly concerned about sexual assault and sexual violence and those things. So, when I talk about Title IX, there's really 4 different federal statutes that we're discussing. That is Title IX. It's also something called the Campus Save Act, the Violence Against Women's Act, and the Clery Act. And Mr. Wayne and Mr. Sears will talk more about some of these other ones in a few minutes. But when I say Title IX, if you're doing the research on this, understand that I'm talking about all of these things together as one group, not just specifically the Title IX statute. Title IX is enforced by the United States Department of Education and the United States Department of Justice. But Dean Naylor, isn't the Department of Justice, don't they lock up the bad guys? Yeah. Aren't they the department that prosecutes people for criminal charges? Yes. So if the U.S. Department of Justice enforces this law, do you think that North Carolina Wesleyan is serious about ensuring that we're in compliance with this law? And the answer is yes. The last thing I want you to see tomorrow morning is somebody arrested me for not following with the federal statutes. So some of you may like to see me arrested. My wife probably will not. Well, depending on the day. Title IX. So we have 2 sources that we enforce Title IX here at the college. One is our Code of Conduct, and 2 is something called the Gender Discrimination and Sexual Harassment Policy. Both of these are found in the Student Handbook. If you go to the Student Handbook and look, you'll see both of these policies set out in full. You can also find the Gender Discrimination and Sexual Harassment Policy in the Employee Handbook, the Faculty Handbook, and some other places on the website. So, let's just break this down and talk about what our Code of Conduct says the rules are. So, beginning on page 24, you'll see that we have renamed all of these things under the concept of sexual misconduct. So, I'm not going to read to you because you guys are in college, you're not first graders, but I do need all of you to take a minute and read this as we go through it. So sexual misconduct is, again, the broad place that we park all of these different things. Let's break them down a little bit and talk about them. Sexual assault is the first one, and it's probably one of the most serious charges we have here. So take a second and read this, and then we're going to talk about some of the individual elements of this. Let's start at the beginning. Read this. Without the express, affirmative, verbal permission and consent. Now, how many of you are aware that our statute requires here at Wesleyan, and by the way, this is pretty much the same provision most every college in America has, requires express, affirmative, verbal permission to engage in any behavior. So if this happens to you and you're in my office, and you say to me, Dean Naylor, I thought she was okay with it, or I thought he was okay with it. My first question is, did you get the express, affirmative, verbal permission or consent? And if your answer is no, guess what? You have just admitted violating our policy. It's not my rules, that's the Department of Education rules. Why is it so specific? Because they don't want to leave any room for interpretation. Because what you may think someone wants, they may not want. You may be misreading the situation. Have any of you ever misread a situation with someone? Absolutely, we all do. You look at someone, you think they're playing, they're not. Or you think they're not playing and they are. Or you think they're okay with something you're saying or doing and they're not. So what we want here is for everyone to make sure that what you're engaging in is consensual. You get this part, you'll be okay with the rest of it. Now, sexual harassment. I want you to take a second and read this because this is probably the biggest provision that we have the most issue with on this campus and most other campuses. And as you go through this, you'll see why in just a second. So sexual harassment is one of those things that if we tried to sit down and define it, it would probably take 30 or 40 pages and we still would miss something. So sexual harassment, in most places you'll see, is one of those things that you have to look at the effect of it, not necessarily the conduct. And you'll see that in just a second. Now if you get here and you read number 1 and number 2, these probably don't apply to students as an actor, although certainly a student could be the victim or the survivor of 1 and 2, because this talks about someone with authority or someone with some type of power over you, requiring you to consent to some type of behavior. Certainly if a coach or a professor or someone makes you feel like that to get playing time or to get a grade, you have to engage in some behavior, that's wrong, and you need to let us know right away. But number 3 here is probably where most problems arise. Such conduct has a purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive college environment. So look at this. Purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's performance or creating an imitating, hostile, or offensive college environment. Stop for a second and think to yourself, is there anything you said or done to someone of the opposite gender that could have put them in this situation, regardless of how you intended it? This is the kind of thing that if you're not careful, you can run afoul of without even intending it. One thing you need to understand about this is not your intent. So when you engage in an analysis of whether someone has committed sexual harassment, you can't open up the head of the person who acted and say, what did you mean to do by this? What were you trying to accomplish by this action or by this word? That's not how it's written. That's not what sexual harassment is. It's how did the other person take it? You could have intended it in jest, but they could have taken it the wrong way. You could have been joking. They may not have taken it as a joking manner. And here's something you'll hear later on from Ms. Quinetta when she speaks to you is, you never know someone's background. You never know what they've been through or what they've experienced. Something to you could be funny and could be a joke, but it could hit mighty close to home to someone else. They could have experienced that. You're joking about it, they lived it. Or their friend, or their sister, or their mom, or their brother went through that. So when you say something in a joking manner, it's really personal to them, and it offends them and causes them problems. And that's what sexual harassment is all about, is you causing someone, whether your behavior is intentional or not, to be in a position that affects them and their ability to be a student and a student athlete here at the school. And I don't think there's anyone in this room that would intentionally go around making someone feel that way. And that's why we have to be so careful with our words or actions, because you can't take them back. You can say whatever you want, but you can't undo that word, or that phrase, or that conduct, or that joke. Here are some examples of sexual harassment. Not limited to these, but unwelcome touching. A person's legs are back, you walk up behind them and put your hand on their back. They may not like that. If you don't know them, and you're not sure from prior action or because they give you the consent to touch them, don't touch someone. Cultures are different. Some cultures it's okay to touch some. Some cultures you don't touch anyone at all. And So that's something you have to be aware of as well. Some families are huggers, some aren't. Displaying sexually suggestive or derogatory objects, pictures, or cartoons or posters. That can be sexual harassment. Unwelcome physical affection, hugs or kisses. That's very, I know some of our South American students, I see you guys walking up to each other and kissing each other on the cheek. That's fine, that's comfortable, you're used to that. An American student may not be used to that. And if you're an American student and you try to kiss an international student, they may not be ready for you to do that because they may not see you in that light because it's not cultural for you to do that. That's why, again, you have to be careful. When you start talking about someone's experiences or someone's activities or commenting on body parts, understand that you're now entering an area that you may make someone feel very uncomfortable and it may bother them. Repeated unwelcome sexual advances, requests for dates, romantic interaction. That could be a problem. Now, I was walking up to someone and say, I think you're a very nice person. I'd like to go to movies with you. I'd like to have coffee with you. Is that okay? Yes. That's probably fine. You've been respectful. But if they say no when you ask them again the next day and they say no, at some point in there you're now being kind of a predator, right? Because they've made it clear they don't see you in that light. Sexual innuendo, suggestive comments, vulgar language. And I know on this campus, just from being here for so long, we have some students that speak in a way that sounds like the most vulgar rap song or movie you've ever seen. And to some students, that's fine when they talk to each other like that. But some people on this campus get highly offended if you use some of those words to them. So again, you have to be careful. Remember, it's not what you intend, it's how they receive it. That's the whole crux of sexual harassment. Teasing or practical jokes, but then now I was just playing with them. Well, you know, you really can't play with some people that way, or you can't talk to some people that way, and until you're sure that you can, your better course of conduct is not to go down that road. Sexual violence is defined in our handbook as action that does not rise to the sexual assault and occurs in any physical contact without the consent when the person is incapable of giving consent. Any physical contact of a sexual nature without consent. Again, it doesn't matter that you thought it was okay. What matters is, did you have that affirmative verbal consent? Dating violence is any behavior by someone when you've been in a relationship with them previously. Some of these are legal definitions, like the next one, domestic violence. I say legal definition. That's the definition under North Carolina law. Take a minute and read that. Stalking is a course of conduct. Consent. So let's take a minute here and talk about consent. Look at the first sentence. Affirmative words indicating the freely, willingly, and knowingly given agreement to have that specific contact. Consent to one act is not consent to the other. What you've done in the past doesn't necessarily give you consent to do something a second time or subsequent time. You have to get consent before you do any act. Look at this last part in red. Conduct will be considered incapacitated and unable to provide express affirmative verbal permission if the individual is under the influence of alcohol or other drugs or substances. Does it say high? No. Does it say drunk? No. Does it say impaired? No. What does it say? Under the influence of. That means that if you're off campus, because nobody would be drinking on campus because that's not allowed, right? Right. So let's move along. Under the influence, that means if your mental or physical faculties are impaired or altered in any way, you are under the influence. Someone has one drink Are they under the influence? Maybe. They've had 5, are they? Probably. But do you really want to be sitting in my office or Mr. Sears' office trying to explain why you thought they were sober and not under the influence? Is that a good place to be? No. So what do? Well, if you're at a party and someone's drinking, you say, not tonight. We'll talk again later, right? Now some of this, you guys and ladies may be thinking, this is dumb, I'm a college student. I understand, and I'm not being silly about it, but this is Title IX as defined by the United States Department of Education. These are the rules we're required to have. And students in colleges all over the country get expelled for engaging in behavior that they thought was okay at the time they engaged in. Remember, I can't say it too much. Cannot say it too much. If you get caught up in one of these things, it really doesn't matter what you thought you were doing. What matters is the facts and how they took it. Right? You guys follow me on that? All right. Additional about consent. If they knew or should have known the person was incapacitated. But Dean Naylor, I didn't see him drink anything. I didn't see him take anything. Well, how was their speech? Well, it was a little different. Well, how did they act? Well, they were pretty chill. You know, those are the questions you got to face. Look at this last sentence. Consumption by either party. But Dean Naylor, I'd been drinking. I didn't know. I'll point out to you, do you remember the night I spoke to you in Powers? Do you remember that slide? Do you remember I highlighted it in red? Do you remember that? Yes, sir. Again, we're not trying to be difficult. We're trying to protect you. We're trying to help you make good decisions. Because the last thing I want to do is take a good student who's a great member of this community and be put in a position where we have to follow our rules, and it means one of you have to leave here. And I don't think there's anybody in this room that wants to engage in behavior where one of your classmates or someone on this campus will feel the way you making a mistake and going too far will make them feel. Because I'll tell you that one night, one mistake on one person's part can cause a lifetime of misery for somebody else. And that may not be your intention. Title IX. I can't say this enough. Any violation of these policies will result in prompt and significant sanctions, including but not limited to suspension, expulsion of the college, and read the last sentence, possible criminal prosecution. You may feel persecuted if the police get involved. And that's not our decision. It's not our decision to call the police. It's the decision of the person that's been affected. So the gender discrimination and sexual harassment policies found in our handbook, in the handbook beginning on page 30. And the definitions there are a little bit different than under our code of conduct. So let's go through those real quick. This is the definition of gender discrimination. Conduct directed at an individual or group that subjects that person or group to treatment that adversely affects their education or employment based upon gender. Read that again. Adversely affects their education. Something happens to someone and they couldn't study the next night, they're making bad grade on their exam. Did that adversely affect their education? Yeah, it did. But Danilo, I didn't mean for that to happen. I understand. That's part of why we're here tonight, right? To talk about these things, so hopefully we won't be in this situation. The definition of sexual harassment doesn't really change. This is a federal definition, so most colleges have the same thing. It's pretty much word for word what you just read. Well, let's go over this one again. Such conduct has a purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive college environment. Again, Doesn't matter what you intended to call. You were just joking. You may have been just joking, but it wasn't a joke to them. How many of you, be honest for a minute, how many of you have had someone say something to you and maybe they were joking, maybe it was a friend, but it kind of hurt your feelings? Does that ever happen to you? It's happened to me. And I know I've done it. I know I've said things to people I care about that cause them issues. And I feel bad about it, but you can't roll words back. So, if any of these things happen, what do? Well, if it involves a student, you can always come directly to me, and we can deal with it. If it involves a faculty, you can also go to Dean Duff, the provost of the college. If it involves a staff member, you can go to Darrell Whitley. But if any of you guys are involved, if you're offended, you can come to me because that's my job as the dean of students. Now, what happens if we go under the sexual harassment policy and not the code of conduct? Well, there's two ways to resolve it. One is an informal resolution, and one is to a formal report. Sometimes someone may come to me and tell me something that happened and say, look, I just don't think they understood. It's really not a big deal to me, but I think they need to know that this is not appropriate, and I think we need to talk about it, but I really don't want to go to the through the process of making this a formal complaint and going down that road. If that happens, I, as a Title IX coordinator, would talk to the person who makes the complaint. I would then talk to the other person and kind of see if we can resolve it, maybe do some type of mediation, maybe do some type of training, make somebody write a paper, just kind of bring it to their attention, and that's kind of the end of it. That's an informal process. That happens sometimes. But this is a formal process, so if something happens and you want to go down that path, or someone files a formal report against you, they'll have to, in writing, file the complaint. Once the complaint's filed, then the Title IX investigator, which is Mr. Wayne Sears, will investigate it, and then I will make the decision as a Title IX coordinator whether I think our policies have been violated, and if they have been violated, then I will issue sanctions or discipline. If it involves a faculty or staff member, we'll get HR involved and go down that road, and that's how that ends. Now, there's also a hearing process. So if someone says, Dean Naylor, I appreciate what you said, but I want to have my hearing. I don't think that's right, and I don't agree with your decision. That's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. We'll have a hearing, and this is how that works. Dr. Clark, as the president of the college, will pick a vice president, not me, and they will chair the proceedings. And then there is the college counselor sits on this, one student or faculty or staff from the offender, one student, faculty, or staff member from the respondent, and then the president will report another person to make it an odd number, and then they'll have a hearing, and the committee will make a decision. They will make a recommendation to the president. The president will make his final decision, and that's it. Like it or not, that's how the process ends. Now, another thing about Title IX and this whole process you need to understand is we make every effort to keep this confidential. But outside of the process, we require it to be confidential. What does that mean? That means if you come to me and say, this has happened to me and I think we need to do something about it, I will call another person, and the first thing that will happen is there'll be an order issued to both people. Nobody talk to anybody about this. It's confidential. It's between these two people, and we're going to handle it. And there will be sanctions and repercussions if either party talks about it. Because, could someone be wrongfully accused of something? Absolutely. So we don't want to hurt someone's reputation by spreading rumors about what they may or may not have done, especially when they haven't done it. Do we want the victim's reputation being run through the ringer because they filed a report? No, we don't want that either. So it's confidential. But now within the process, there are other people that will have to know. Mr. Sears will have to know, obviously. If you appeal it, the people on the committee will have to know. So we do everything we can to keep that confidential. Title IX is written to be about the person who has been offended or who is a survivor. So the number one thing I'm concerned about and we're concerned about is not punishing somebody for doing something wrong. It's helping the person that's struggling. And so there's a lot of things we can do to help that person. They're called accommodations under Title IX. And so we can change class schedules of one or both parties. We can change residence halls. We can offer academic assistance. You can get extra time to turn in a paper or something of that nature. We can issue no contact orders. We can basically do anything we need to do to help the survivor or to help the victim be able to finish the semester and finish their classes as best they can. That's what this whole thing is about. It's not about punishment. So we have some people come to us and say, look, this has happened to me. I really just want to keep it informal. I don't want to go down any path, but I need help. That's fine. Come to us. Let us help you. That's why we're here. We're glad to do that. I just thought that maybe you needed to see this again. All right. How many of you took the Student Honor Pledge when you came here? Should be everybody, right? What does it say? I pledge to conduct myself as an honorable member of this community. Obey the rules and regulations. I further agree to report others who violate this pledge and understand I'll be held responsible for my failure to act. Now, I know this isn't popular, and I understand about snitches, and I understand all that stuff. I'm old, but not that old. We had the same sayings back then. But I say this to remind you that each one of you have sworn an oath and taken an obligation to help protect each other. And if you cover for your buddy for doing something terrible to another student, are you acting honorably? I don't think so. I don't think any of you would intentionally let one of our students be harmed to protect someone else. And I will tell you this, studies, statistics, research shows over and over, if someone is a predator at 18, they'll be a predator at 19, and at 30, and at 50, and it won't get easier. Yeah, but he didn't mean to do that. And he won't mean to do the next thing either. Some of this helps the person while we can deal with it. Because it may be a minor thing now, but we can get help for that person. And you let it go on, they may wind up dealing with prison system and with lawyers and with things that will completely ruin their life. Think about that. I'm the Title IX coordinator. Mr. Sears is the Title IX investigator. You guys know where to find us if you need anything. Campus Resources, Ms. Quinetta Johnson is going to speak to you next. This is her number and her email. Her office is right across from the cafeteria. So if you guys need her, that's where you go. If you go to her office and her door's shut, she's probably seeing someone. You can come to my office, see Miss Wendy Little. She can make you an appointment with Miss Johnson. Off campus, there's a group called My Sister's House. You guys may want this number. It is a confidential resource that helps, it's a place that helps people who are victims of domestic violence. It operates in Nash and Edgecombe counties. And this is the number you may need. Security, you guys, just a brief rundown. You remember that Mr. Sears is the Director of Security. Mr. Martin McCoy is the Assistant Director. We have our campus security officers here. And at night, you will see the Rocky Mountain Police Department walking around. And for you young ladies, remember that Ms. Tamika Lott lives on the first floor of Edgecombe. Those are all people you can go to if you need help. Any questions? All right, guys, thank you very much for your time. Ms. Quinetta Johnson, our campus secretary.
I'm Miss Quinetta or Miss Johnson. I've seen some of you guys around. I'm sure you guys have probably seen me around because I'm across from the past. So I'm going to talk about why this is only required for you guys. So basically, you guys have a voice that sometimes just an average student doesn't, because you're a face that maybe they see often, and you're a part of a group, and you guys often stick together. A lot of you guys that I see together now, I see you guys together in the hallway. So your voices put together can uplift the community and prevent a lot of the things that Dean Naylor talked about. So you guys already heard about what sexual violence was, sexual harassment, and all of those things. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the statistics, because sometimes words don't mean anything until you know how they affect real people. So women between the ages of 18 to 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. So are you guys in between that age, 18 to probably not 24, but around your age group? So the presence of a gun in domestic violence situations increases the risk of homicide by 500%. And 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men in the United States, they have been raped in their lifetime. And so like Dean Naylor was saying, it's important not to make certain jokes or not to laugh at certain things. And even when it's like Snapchat or things that you post or things that you share, to be mindful of what you share and what you post. And also, I don't think it was covered, but if someone's sending pictures or videos, or if you received a picture or video of someone in a compromising situation, it's best for you not to continue sharing that, because you could get in trouble, and also you never know what that could lead that person in the picture or the video to do. And domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. And so basically what that means, if you have a friend or you know someone who's in an abusive relationship, we all know that sometimes people will say, well, why don't you just leave, or they're stupid. And so basically you shaming a person for not being able to leave a certain situation doesn't make them any better or their situation. It can lead to depression or even suicidal behaviors. And 72% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. 94% of the victims of these murder-suicides are usually female. And so these are some things to think about. And average nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. And so also, domestic violence and sexual assault and sexual abuse is not a woman thing. It also can happen to males. And so it's important for you guys to also understand that on campus, even though we have people to investigate things for Title IX, I am a person on campus that you can come to and talk to, and we can plan together what you want to do or what you don't want to do, because I'm not obligated to necessarily report the individual who's coming to me. I am here for a source so you can talk to somebody. And also that my sister's house is a place also that helps. So what can you do to help prevent? So basically, know your resources, stay alert, and be careful about posting your location. So how many people in here, in your little cliques and groups that you're typically in, share your locations with each other? It's kind of common. And so basically, that's a new thing that you guys do in this generation, which is fine, but it's also being mindful when it talks about social media, maybe posting when you're on Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is that you guys are into, because maybe someone may not know where you are, and maybe they're stalking you like they talked about earlier, and it's like, oh, you just posted that you're in an internet cafe, and then they come to the internet cafe and you have no idea who this person is, but they know who you are because they've been stalking you. So it's important to, it's okay to share with your friends, but to tag your location can be dangerous sometimes. And make others earn your trust. So think about a plan B and be secure. So basically, also with dating sites, so I know you guys are all here in college, and maybe you have a boo or bae or whoever, or maybe you don't, and you're on a dating app. So it's important to make sure that you're just not meeting someone online today and going to hook up or do whatever tomorrow, or even telling them, yes, I live alone, or yeah, my roommate's going to be gone, because that's setting up yourself to possibly be a target for sexual assault or other things. And then think about a plan B. So even though I say be mindful of if you meet someone online and you go out with them, if you do those things, always be smart and always let someone know where you are. Especially if you share your locations, this is a good time for your friends to have your location in case you're moving around throughout the night. But to also be mindful of what you could do if you needed to escape. And then be secure. So we already talked about not sharing your location, but also being mindful of when you're out on campus. For all of you, we have the blue light towers. So if you're ever walking out and you're feeling safe or uncomfortable, you can always hit those. And Mr. Sears always says if you are in an area and you see a blue light, that means something's going on or something has happened. So you need to make sure you move securely away from the area. And then also some tips for all of you guys, like Dean Naylor said, not like you guys are drinking alcohol, but anything that you're drinking to protect your drink. So this is something that's very important that I learned when I was a college freshman. Sometimes you think, oh, well, I just met them or they're cool and they hand you a drink. You should never take a drink from a stranger who has made it out of your sight and brought to you, because you don't know what could be in that drink. And then also, if you're all hanging out, like right now, say, what's your name in the burgundy coat? Devin. So Devin's kind of like sitting up and say he had a cup on the ground, and the guy next to him put something in his drink and he's facing this way and he has no clue. So it's just being mindful of maybe having your tumblers with tops or whatever type of drinks to cover your drink so no one can put anything in it. So we talked about knowing where the call bells are. Do you guys know where the call bells are? No? So for those that do, inform your friends, and Mr. Sears is always here to educate. So if you aren't sure where the blue lights are, you can talk to Mr. Sears or even talk to your peers that are aware. And always let a loved one know where you are. So we talked about that, and loved ones could be your friends. So these are some things that you could do if you experience sexual assault or your friends do. So make use of campus resources. So that could be me, that could be Mr. Sears, that could be Dean Naylor, that could be anyone that you feel comfortable with and you want to share, so you don't have to deal with it alone. Request a schedule or housing change. So this is something that if you're assaulted or offended or threatened by someone who you see on a daily basis, possibly in class or in your building, you are able to talk to a resource, be it Dean Naylor or Mr. Sears or myself or Dean Langley, to say, hey, I don't feel comfortable, and you can share briefly or in detail what you've experienced, but we all just want you guys to feel safe and supported in your community. Seek a civil protection order. So this could be something where if it's someone who's not in your community on campus and they're harassing you or stalking you and they won't leave you alone, and it's something that maybe a no contact order can't deal with here, and maybe you might need something a little bit more so that you're protected also off campus. And create a safety plan. So how many of you ladies, when you do go out with people that possibly you meet on social media or even like guys that you go on dates with, how many of you guys have safety plans? That if he's creepy or he wants to put you in his trunk.
Okay.
We all like
We
it.
just went there.
Wow. So it's important to also
Not in
sometimes
the
think of
back
a
seat
safety
of the
plan.
trunk.
So Mr. Sears always tells us in our meetings, if you think about it, you plan it out, 9 times out of 10 you're more likely to get away safely. So you won't end up in that trunk. But if you did and you had a plan, you'd know to pull a brake light or something. And seek professional counseling. So that could be me. You can talk to me on campus. Or if you also wanted to talk about someone and you didn't feel comfortable, I could also provide you with resources. Because to me, it's just important that you have someone that you trust and you can talk to freely. So if you also know someone who's experienced sexual assault or you have done that, like experienced it yourself, it's important to be patient and understanding, because everyone can say, oh, I do that or I wouldn't do that, but none of us know what we would or wouldn't do if we're not in a certain situation. So these are some warning signs that someone you know may have been affected by sexual assault. So signs of depression. So could be persistent sadness, lack of energy, changes in their sleep or appetite, withdrawing from their normal activities or feeling down. They could be self-harming, or thoughts of suicide or suicidal behaviors. And so, like I mentioned earlier, seeing a lot of you guys that are together, and I see a lot of you guys together often. So if you notice that your friend's not hanging out as much, or they're sad, or they smell weird, or they're not getting dressed, like you notice things are changing, and you know that's not who your friend is to be, to take note of that. And even if you don't know what to do, to possibly reach out to someone to get some help so that you can provide resources. Low self-esteem. So sometimes when someone's experienced sexual assault, they can possibly be super confident and feel like they don't have to hide certain things. So maybe once your friend was comfortable with changing in front of certain people, and maybe now she's not, just small things that maybe she's ashamed of or shy with that she wasn't or he wasn't before. And then also, if someone's been sexually assaulted, they can have an STD or STI. And so if one of your close friends comes to you and say, hey, I think I have an STD or STI, and you say, well, where'd you get it? And they're tell you that possibly they were sexually assaulted, to be aware that it was tough enough for them to tell you that they have an STD or STI, but then also if they tell you they've been sexually assaulted, to be mindful to just use kind words and just try and be there for them and possibly go with them to see Miss Jessica, the physician assistant, or wherever they need to go. So also people can experience anxiety after and just worry about a lot of things, and maybe some things they were comfortable with, they're not comfortable with, they may have panic attacks just because it's a traumatic situation. Avoiding specific situations or places. So maybe if it's a group of people and you're used to hanging out and you notice maybe like two people aren't really talking to each other, or they're being a little weird or distant, to note that and not to make fun of them, but to ask them in a private setting, hey, like what's going on, is everything okay? Failing grades or withdrawing from classes. So all of you are here to go to class and to do great. So if you notice that one of your friends is not showing up, or they're failing, or they're maybe the ones that help you study or have all the notes and they don't, to be mindful to just check in with your friend. And we all know that whole saying now, check in with your strong friend, just because anything can happen to any of us. And sometimes it's hard for people to ask for help, and so just being a friend and checking in could be very helpful. And increase drug use or alcohol use, well, alcohol or other drugs. So basically, if your friend maybe doesn't drink or do other drugs, of course not here on campus, but wherever, just to note that if someone's drinking more or doing drugs more, that they could be trying to cope with something and numb pain. So if someone shares they have been sexually assaulted, what's okay? So does anybody want to say some things that maybe you shouldn't say to someone when they tell you, or if they tell you they've been sexually assaulted? Just one person in the whole room. I'm asking you actual guys out in front of me. What's something that you think is not okay to say? You're dumb? What? So that's something that's unacceptable. So also, don't ask questions that suggest they are to blame. So don't say, why did you wear that? Because we just had the Women's March. So it's like one sign I saw that rape was invented or created or happened before miniskirts. So don't say, what were you wearing? Where were you at? Things like that to victim blame. Don't say anything that minimizes the incident or the survivor's healing. So don't say, well, you know, you should be over it by now, that happened last month, or you're with someone else. Just be mindful. Don't ask for details if they're not offering. So it's like one of those things, if someone shares some information with you, they shared that, if they didn't go into details, then maybe they're not ready. So it's okay if you do ask because you're concerned, but if they don't want to tell you or they don't go any further, just be mindful not to press the issue. And again, we said don't ask what you were wearing, and don't do anything to blame the victim again. So that's very important, because it's not, like I said, a woman thing. It also happens to men, but oftentimes our society blames the woman. And so it's just to be mindful that even as other women, to be kind to each other and not to make the other person feel like it was their fault. So some acceptable things to say, things that are okay. Is there anything you want right now, or is there anything that I can do? And for some people, you may think that there's nothing I can do, I don't know what to say, and you may think that it's a good idea to distance yourself. Sometimes that's the worst thing that you can do, because sometimes people don't need you to say anything, they just need someone to be there. And I believe you. Or if you don't believe them, fine, but don't say I don't believe you, because just think about if in a time in your life when you did something and you knew you were innocent, but everyone blamed you, and you know how you felt, and maybe it wasn't something on this scale. So it's not your fault. Thank you for telling me, and I'm so sorry you went through that. So if you don't know what to say, you don't have anything to say, I mean, you can just say that. It's not your fault, because a lot of times when this happens to people, they feel I should have known better, I didn't know him or her, I shouldn't have went there, I shouldn't have worn that. And this is not the time for them to be shooting all over themselves. This is the time for them to find the resource and a helping hand so that they can heal. Discuss possible options, but don't pressure them to do anything, and don't underestimate the barriers to reporting. So if you find out that your friend has been sexually assaulted and they tell you and they say, well, I don't want to tell anyone, but then they want to talk to you about it, this is also not the time to tell them they're dumb. This is not the time to say, I don't want to hear it if you're not going to do anything about it, because sometimes it takes people time to build up the courage to do something. And also, there are times where people report things and you have to go and you have to relive and retell the story over and over, and that can be very uncomfortable. And so sometimes it just takes people to get up the nerve to go and report it to someone else, but maybe at that time you're the only person that they're comfortable with talking to. And then also, if that happens and your friend reports it and you're not sure, oftentimes it's okay for you to even come to my office together and support your friend, or come with another friend to get support for your friend that is going through sexual assault. So abusive relationships, we talked a little bit about the statistics. So dating violence is something that you guys have already covered. So it's any violent behavior by a person who is or has been in a social, romantic, or intimate relationship with the victim. So sometimes people think dating violence is girlfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend. No, it's anyone that you've had a social interaction with, whether it be the man you met on Tinder, the woman you met on Tinder, Snapchat, wherever you meet these people. If you had a social interaction and maybe you only hung out with them once and they hit you or do whatever on that day, it's considered dating violence. And we talked about domestic violence. So that's violence committed by the victim's current or former spouse, current or former cohabitating romantic partner, or individuals who they share a child in common. So domestic violence is dealt with outside of a college campus, but dating violence is not always handled in the same way. So just because maybe something happens off campus and you know someone who had an abusive boyfriend or girlfriend, or someone they just met and had a social interaction with, something can be done about it here on campus. So that's very important to know. So nearly 1.5 million high school students nationwide experience physical abuse from a dating partner in a single year. So why did I put that? You guys are all in college. But just a year ago, or a few months ago, some of you guys were in high school. So that, it hits close to home. And maybe you knew some people that were in an abusive relationship, maybe you didn't, but it's a high number. So to be mindful when you are talking about things, or when you are making jokes, or even if you're making assumptions about people's relationships and scars, to be mindful that you never know who could be a survivor or a victim of the situation. 1 in 3 adolescents in the U.S. is a victim of physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. And so this is something that can happen often on a college campus during your time. So maybe if you're in a relationship with a girl or a guy and they say they love you, but they say you're fat, you're ugly, they say all these negative things about you to you, and you start to believe them, and they hurt your feelings, that's also not okay. So that is verbal abuse, and that can be very detrimental to your mental health and sometimes your physical health, because you can lead to other, maybe like eating disorders or things like that. So 1 in 10 adolescents have been purposefully hit, slapped, or physically hurt by a partner. So that's also another thing. So maybe if you have friends and they're in a relationship and you notice that they maybe hit each other playfully, and maybe if you're concerned, or if you know that there's something happening behind closed doors, to talk to your friend, and maybe, of course, not in front of that person, but to see if your friend needs any assistance. So the next one is about signs that possibly someone is being abused. So according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, some warning signs are their partner is extremely jealous or possessive. So maybe you guys meet here, or even if someone has a partner back home, and your friends say, oh, I can't go to this party, or I can't do X, Y, and Z because Joe's at home and Joe has my location. If I go, he's going to curse me out, beat me, whatever. Like, just being mindful that someone caring or being overly concerned about where you are does not always mean love, and sometimes that could be a warning sign. They have unexplained marks or injuries. Their partner insults them in front of other people. They stop spending time with friends and family. They're depressed or anxious. and you notice changes in their personality. So maybe if you have a friend that's very bubbly and she's always ready to go party, and then all of a sudden she gets into this relationship and she's not the same, she doesn't want to go out, she doesn't dress the same, like certain things to check in on. They're constantly worried about making their partner angry, or they make excuses for their partner's behavior. So maybe if you guys say something small about your friend's partner, and then they're like, okay, well, I can't be your friend, he was right or she was right. Just to be mindful that if they are being abused, that oftentimes they're going to stick with the abuser because it affects them in a mental way, an emotional way, and sometimes it takes time for them to get away from their partner. So if you think that your friend or family member is being abused, be supportive by listening to them and asking them questions about how they're doing. The person being abused may not be ready to leave the relationship right now. So these are some common physical effects of domestic violence. So bruises, of course, bruises around the eye, sprained or broken wrist, chronic fatigue, bruises, or repeating bruises around the eye. Muscle tension, involuntary shaking, changes in eating and sleeping patterns, sexual dysfunction, menstrual cycle, or fertility issues in women. So also, some of these things that are long-term can be caused over time from physical impact. So arthritis, chronic pain, also they can have asthma, digestive problems, heart problems, irritable bowel syndrome, nightmares, migraines, and stress and problems with their immune system. A serious risk of physical abuse is contusions and traumatic brain injuries. So TBIs are something that oftentimes people can get if they're in a car accident or if they had a really bad fall. But also, being abused by a partner can cause a TBI. And a traumatic brain injury can affect your emotional, social, it can just change who a person is totally. So, more signs of the abusive partner, like we talked about, just things to be mindful of. So if you meet someone and you think, oh my God, they love me because they're everywhere that I am, they're concerned about my friends or what I'm wearing, that could be a red flag. So how to help someone in an abusive relationship. So I talked about talking to them in private, not talking to them in a room full of people, definitely not talking to them in front of their partner, and letting them know that you're concerned, being supportive, offering specific help, so not just saying you should leave that person, actually working with them to create a plan, because you telling them they should leave, they know they should leave, they know they possibly want to leave, but they may not have the resources or the know-how. And also the person that they're with could be financially taking care of everything and paying their bills, and you as a friend could just be willing to say you should leave, but not willing to help them eat or find a place to live. So if you're gonna do something, say something, but if you're not gonna just do anything and you're just talking to talk, like be mindful that that could keep them in that relationship a little bit longer, because they may feel like they don't have any support from their friends or their loved ones. So how do you report? So if you see or hear violence or child abuse in your neighborhood or public place, of course call 911. And if that's going on, call 911. But also you can talk to Mr. Sears and call the security's number after hours. Or if you want to report the abuse, but there's no immediate danger, you can always email or call. Like if it's something that you heard about and you're not sure and it's not going on at that moment, don't be afraid to reach out to someone and say something. So, also, PTSD can occur from people who have been in abusive relationships, so post-traumatic stress syndrome. So they can have flashbacks, panic attacks, uncontrollable thoughts, and night sweats. And also when we talked about them possibly having suicidal thoughts. So here's the suicidal hotline. So also that's a number that you guys could put in your phone. So maybe if you come across a friend or you yourself are having thoughts of suicide, then it's a 1-800 number that you can call if you're not comfortable reaching out to me right away. And we have a crisis line on campus that leads straight to me, and you can call or text it at any hour. And even during the school day, when I am working with people, I still check the phone if it rings just to make sure that no one's calling in a crisis. and common spiritual effects of domestic violence, people can feel hopeless, they feel unworthy, they may be having an inability to trust because, I mean, let's be honest, no one just goes on a first date or meets someone and on that first date they get punched in the face right away. That's kind of a telltale sign maybe I should leave. How abuse works is they take you out, they treat you nice, they say great things to you, they get you in, and then they slowly see what they can do, and then they slowly become the person that maybe does something physical to injure you. So be mindful of that when you are judging someone who may be in an abusive relationship. It builds up over time. So how therapy helps. So we talked about some of the things of sexual assault, physical abuse, and one thing that you can do on campus is come and talk to me, and I am a therapist. So it may help with you coping or your emotional concerns, with processing the traumatic events, or it can help you rebuild your self-esteem, or it can help just be a support or manage your anxiety. Because sometimes people, when they come to me, there's not anything that they may be ready to do at that point. Maybe they just want to talk about what happened, and sometimes you can just come to my office just to cry until you're ready to talk about whatever's going on or whatever happened. So things that you could do is speak with a counselor, and that's me. And so this is the crisis line that I'll tell you all about. So it's 252-591-1557, and that leads directly to me. And then there's a 24-hour hotline for anyone who's experienced or knows someone who is going through this and maybe you want to talk to someone. It's the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, and it's also the 1-800 number in my sister's house. Does anyone have any questions or comments? And so one thing I want to say before I leave is if anyone needs to make an appointment, you can always email me, or you can also send a text to the crisis line or drop by my office and go down to Student Affairs and meet with Miss Wendy, and she can put you on my calendar. All right? So thank all of you. And then also I have walk-in Wednesdays on, of course, Wednesdays. And so even if you just wanted to drop by and say hi, or you can see where my office is, then you can do that too.
Thank you. Before Mr. Sears finishes up for us, I'm going to give you a minute to stretch if you need a break, but we expect you to sit up and pay attention. Don't slouch your seat, keep your phones away. 99% of you are doing a good job of that, a few of you not. So if you need to stretch, go ahead, stand up right now, get some blood flowing, throw your hands in the air, whatever you need to do. And then Mr. Sears is going to wrap it up for us once you get the blood flowing.
Good job, Ted.
All right, everybody go ahead and get settled back down. You take your coat off, put one on, whatever you need to do. And then let's get Mr. Sears out
Up,
there.
down. Up, down. I got 5 seconds. True. That's the way it's
All right, let's get settled down. Let's go. Thank you, Mr. Sears. Let's give him a clap. Let's give him, let's give him warmed up.
Statement here to give everybody's attention, let you know life is serious and death is even more serious. What do everybody think about something for a minute? I can tell you where I was December 4th, 1990. Most of y'all were not born in this room. Some of our coaches were. December 4th, 1990, Dr. Clark was a student here. And I was 2 days before starting the police academy. January 24th, 1995. I'll tell you what happened that afternoon. January 24th, 1995, in Central Prison of Raleigh, the executioner stuck a needle in the arm of a man named Kermit Smith and put him to death. And a friend of mine, who's an employee at Western College, named Linda Jones, was the witness to that execution for the family. The family of Willamette Collins, who on December 4th, 1990, was out of that gym as a cheerleader. He took her and 2 more Western students, put them in the trunk of his car, took them out here to Halifax County, and killed Clyde Western cheerleader, Willamette Collins. Life is serious, death is permanent. Dean Naylor and I talk about protecting our students. We talk about keeping you safe, we talk about good decisions. We're not saying that because it makes us feel good. Dean Naylor, how many years were you a prosecutor?
4.5.
4.5 years a prosecutor. He and I tried several murder cases together. We say it because we know what reality is. We say it because we realize that as soon as you drop your guard, as soon as you quit paying attention to the details, and even when you do the right things, tragedy sits on every corner. But it will surely come calling if you don't pay attention. It's been here at Western College before. So I want you to pay attention as we close this up. We've talked about the student handbook side of the serious issue of sexual assault. We've talked about Title IX. We've talked about the mental health side of it. We're going to change it a little bit. We're going to talk about the legal side of it and a few more things. We're going to start with the less serious, then we're going to get into the legal ramifications that go to jail side of some of this topic. Because you have to realize this can go far beyond either Dean Naylor's office or my office. Some of this can lead you to going to jail. Key Bitchin's understanding. This comes back to the athletic side. Your voice matters in this topic. The things you say every day sends messages about your beliefs and values. What influences your beliefs? Your ideas about sexual violence. And I'm not going to read this to you. I want you to read as we go. Your views of this topic are very important. It shapes your output. Your output being the way you joke about it, or take it serious, the way you discuss it among peers, friends, in class, on social media, and even your reaction to other people's comments. This is an example of how your words affect others. What can you do? Say the right things all the time. Don't wait for a critical moment. The words you choose every day reflect your values. No matter what Dean Naylor said about popular conversation and rap and things, forget rap. If you embrace racial sayings, if you curse, if you say the Lord's name in vain every 3 sentences, sooner or later, you're going to slip up, you're going to say the wrong thing at the wrong time, this is going to sting, right? Same here. You've got to embrace this mindset, and you have to display it every day in the way you conduct yourself, or it's going to come out that that's not who you truly are. When your comments to blame victims, make light of sexual violence, let others know you don't agree. Even if you don't have a perfect response, have a response. You can become an agent of change. Whether you are showing your support for a survivor or helping someone better understand these issues, your voice is needed in conversation, your voice is powerful. And it doubles down when you're an athlete. because people look to you whether you believe it or not. It is a fact. Sexual violence happens in every community. Again, be an agent for change. Sexual violence is any type of unwanted sexual contact, including rape and assault. This can include words and actions like sexual harassment, catcalling, and non-consensual sharing of private images such as revenge porn, which we'll talk about more in a minute. Sexual violence impacts everyone. Nearly 1 in 5 women and 1 in 67 men in the U.S. have experienced rape or attempted rape sometime in their lives. Anyone can experience sexual violence, including children, teens, adults, and seniors. Victims often, and this is a very high statistic, victims very often know their attacker. Family members, friends, and other trusted individuals, even romantic partners. And this next sentence is interesting. They may use coercion, manipulation, threats, or force. What is coercion? With the internet, we see this more and more every year. Somebody convinces you they have something on you. Somebody convinces you they've accessed your computer and they have images of you. They convince you they've accessed something that is embarrassing to you. And they blackmail you for sexual contact. We see this more and more. Victims are never to blame. It doesn't matter what someone's wearing, how they're acting, if they're drinking, or what type of relationship they have who abuse them. Victims often fear retaliation, fear they won't be believed. They distrust law enforcement. They share the fear of being blamed and pressure from others. Sexual assault is often not reported, and healing justice looks different for every survivor. Now touched on this a minute ago. It is your choice if you're a victim of sexual assault, whether law enforcement's involved or not. Totally your choice. If you're a victim of sexual assault, you say, I do not want law enforcement involved. I want school to handle this, and that's all I want to do. I want you to know what happened. We are going to file a John Doe or Jane Doe report with the police. We're going to tell the police somebody was sexually assaulted here, but we're going to mask that person's identity. We are going to report it to the federal government through clear reporting. And then we're going to take care of our business, investigating and eliminating that problem at the school, including that person. Healing is an ongoing process. Everyone heals in their own time and own way. You can support survivors. Chances are you know someone right now who's a victim of this, and you don't even know it. They're listening to what you have to say. They're listening to your words and your actions. What you may think is a joke among close friends could be deeply painful to somebody who's a victim of this. Raise your voice. Sexual violence thrives when it's not taken seriously. Victim blaming goes unchecked. And your voice is essential in setting the record straight. This is what NCAA says about consent. You later touched on this. I'll go through this quickly. NCAA says the same thing. A clear and agreed upon understanding that we're about to have sexual relations or contact. And it's not inhibited by drugs, alcohol, or a person with mental defects. Consent is fundamental. You must gain consent before sexual relations, not during. And verbal communication clarifies consent. There must be positive agreement. These factors don't count. The absence of no is not consent. Body language, flirtation, coercion, clothing choice, they don't equal consent. The word yes equals consent. And it must be freely given, willingly, and free of emotional fear, intimidation, psychological pressure. And again, no drinking, no drugs. Consent is impermanent. Impermanent means not permanent. It means if you get consent one time, it's not binding, it doesn't last until next week, and it's not lasting an hour from now. It's retractable. It's retractable. Means you can change your mind. And it's autonomous. Means the status of a relationship doesn't make it all automatic. It's equitable. You can't consent to somebody who has authority over you, such as a teacher, coach. You can't consent to them because they have power over you. Change the subject now. Back in August, we had a venue called the Red Flag Campaign. From the Brownsville classroom building, administrative building, Kennesaw classroom building, red flags lined the walkways all the way to this building. And the Red Flag Campaign was this right here. It was to encourage students to recognize red flags. The red flags of relationships and report them, or to encourage the person that you see these red flags go up around to seek assistance. Everybody see those? Control, dishonesty, abuse, disrespect, intimidation, sexual abuse, dependence, hostility. Is this your relationship or relationship of a friend? If so, it's time to have a talk with your friend, with your partner, or maybe a counselor. Those are all unhealthy relationships. What are the effects of these things outside the college? We'll start talking about now the severe consequences of bad decisions. No, I'm going to go back one time, back to red flags. Everybody saw the red flags? What are we talking about there? Anybody want somebody throw me out? What are we talking about when we say red flags? I want to harp on this for a minute, and we'll move on from consequences, and we'll be through for tonight. What are red flags? What are we talking about? How somebody talks to you. Good example. A partner who constantly belittles you, takes away your self-esteem, runs you into the ground verbally, starts trying to take control of you, isolating you from your friends, doesn't trust you, wants to see your phone, wants to see your bank account, controls your spending, controls how you have contact with your family and friends. It happens. Male and female, it happens a lot. These are signs of an abusive relationship. These are signs of a controlling relationship. If you're a person in this relationship where you're being controlled, manipulated, cut off from your friends and family, somebody has to examine every step you make and everything you do. You're in a bad relationship. And it only gets worse and worse. If you have a friend in this position, you need to point it out to them. This is what we see you in. This is how we suggest you end it. See a counselor, see Mr. Sears, see somebody. This right here happens on this campus right here too. If you're the person doing these things, you may need to go look in the mirror. Because this is not a relationship. This is not a relationship. Relationships are healthy. Relationships build a couple. And they're not one-sided. Now let's talk about consequences of bad decisions. Sexual assault. This is what the state calls sexual assault. It includes touching the sexual organ, use descriptions, or another person within your organ, but any part of another person. including physical contact with another person, whether accomplished directly through the clothing of the person committing offense, through the clothing of the victim. You could touch somebody unwantedly in one of these places, even through their clothing, in this state of sexual assault. Talk about rape. First-degree rape. Intercourse against the will of another person, uses, threats to use, or displays a dangerous or deadly weapon, or an article which the person believes to be a dangerous or deadly weapon, or to inflict serious injury to the victim, or they're aided by one or more persons. Any person who commits this offense is a Class B1 felony in this state. It is a mandatory 192 months in prison, first offender. I don't care if you never had a ticket spitting on the sidewalk. It's 192 months minimal. And for first offenders it caps at 240. If you got priors, it gets much, much worse. A young lady that is intoxicated cannot say no. Two buddies get together, bad decision, take advantage of her. 192 months is a long, long, long time. It's going to be the worst decision of your life. Second-degree rape. Intercourse. A force against will of the other person. No weapon, just force. No weapon, just force. Who's mentally disabled or incapacitated. Or you know or should know the person is mentally disabled, mentally incapacitated, or physically helpless. 58 to 78 months. This is where date rape drugs and those things fall in. Physically, totally incapacitated. 58 to 78 months minimum. Guys, I say this to guys, was 99.5% of these people get convicted of this. Take it back, it's probably close to 96%. This also applies to a young lady with a 15-year-old young man. She's 15 to 21, it equals 58 months in prison. And I don't care how old she looked, I've heard 100 times, she looked 18, mister. It don't matter what she looked, it matters what's on that birth certificate. You better know who you're with. You get hooked up with the wrong young lady, or young ladies with the wrong young man that you think's more mature than they are. Again, she may be 15, you may be 21, it's going to equal 58 months in jail. You want to see a case that this attorney will not let loose of, it's one of these. Very few of these are ever pled away. Domestic violence, we call 50B. Current or former household members. This is what domestic violence means. Attempting to cause bodily injury or intentionally causing bodily injury, or placing the aggrieved party or member of the aggrieved party's family or household in fear of imminent serious bodily injury or continual harassment that rises to such level as inflicts substantial emotional distress. Look at one I just put up there. That's the one that gets most people. A person of the opposite sex who lives together or have lived together, or our current household members. You get a real angry, bad breakup relationship and you can't deal with it, and you have lived together or been household members together, you start harassing somebody, you start really intimidating them, playing those games with them, they're going to turn to 50B, domestic violence. Also applies if you've just been in a dating relationship with them. You don't even have to live together. A dating relationship. 50B also includes current or former household members, including homosexual partners who have lived together or current roommates. This is where domestic violence in the state of North Carolina gets very, very interesting to a lot of people who go downtown and don't understand why they can't leave jail. In the state of North Carolina, you cannot post bail. You cannot post bail for domestic violence until you appear before an actual judge. Or 72 hours. How many days are 72 hours? 3 days. It's called a cooling off period. In North Carolina, if you get arrested for slapping your girlfriend for sticking a ink pen in the backside of your boyfriend's back for looking at a girl wrong, you throw your phone at him and hit him in the head. You kick her while she's walking out the door, she made you mad. You will not get out of jail until you go before a judge, not a magistrate. The magistrate is going to put you in jail. That's who the policeman takes you in front of, a judge. And if it's Friday when this happens, when's the next time a judge is going to be on the bench? Monday morning. This is not serious. I just punched her one time. Gee, she made me mad. I understand she made you mad. I understand that. But your answer to that has got you put in jail for 72 hours. Now, the second side of this is what Dean Nato is going to do to remedy this problem. I suggest you go find somewhere to get a job or go to school, because I don't think you'll be here the next Monday morning. Domestic violence will get you put in jail. And realize it includes intimidation. It also includes physical contact. It includes threats. Protective orders. If you're the victim of domestic violence, you have a right to a protective order. If you have a protective order served on you, the first thing it's going to do is going to ban you from seeing the person, speaking to the person, sending messages even through third parties. This isn't a no contact order from college. We're talking about a real order from a judge that the police serve on you. The bad thing or the good thing, depending on how you want to look at an ex parte order. Ex parte means in Latin emergency. An emergency order allows one person to go tell their story. Within 10 days, there must be a hearing, and then you get to tell your side. But until you're before a judge and tell your side, the only side told is the victim or an alleged victim. And some of the rules of an ex parte order are the sheriff can come and remove any firearms or weapons from your person or property. In some cases, if you live together, the sheriff can come and remove you from your property and give the other person total domicile in that property until this 10-day hearing is. Your Honor, I just gave her a little boot with my foot as she went out the door. She made me mad. Didn't even hurt her that bad. I understand, son. I understand. But now I'm going to show you what that bad decision is going to cost you. If you get a protective order, once you go to that 10-day hearing, it may be set for up to 1 year. And the court then can renew it for additional years. So ladies or gentlemen, here's the point of this. If you're in a red flag abusive relationship, you may go to the magistrate. Not only may you seek a warrant for domestic violence, even absent from getting a warrant, you may seek an ex parte order. And within 10 days, there must be a hearing which you will tell your side. If your other half shows up, they can tell their side. If they don't show up, then it's automatically going to be probably found in your favor. The judge will then issue a permanent 1-year order explaining to this person what they can and cannot do. And oftentimes, they may not be within 500 feet of you at any time. And it goes into depth to say, such as, if you're at the mall and she shows up at the mall, or vice versa. He's at the mall and she shows up at the mall, the other party is partay orders on, you're going to have to vacate. I was here first, doesn't count. You can't be within 500 foot of that person. But Your Honor, we go to the same church together. I suggest you find another church when she shows up. Your Honor, our kids, not our kids, our families go to the same swim meet. We all go to the same basketball games. When she shows up, you can be at a different basketball game. These are very, very serious things with very deep implications. 50 C orders and no contact orders from a judge. These are often issues to stalkers. Well, what's the difference? Stalker doesn't have to be somebody you've had a relationship with. It's just somebody who has an infatuation with you. So these can be issued against stalkers, people that are harassing you, people that just have a problem with you. These are 50 C orders. These are available to you. You see Ms. Quinetta Johnson, you see me, and I'll tell you how to get these. My young ladies, one of the resources we love to give you, and one of the things on our website, one of the things on the flyers, the little trifolds I'll put on every desk beginning of every semester, has my sister's house listed on there. They are a victims advocacy group. All this information is available through them. They will walk you through the process. They will help you through the process if you need this. One thing I want to mention right before I close out is this. If you're caught violating one of these, the judge will put you in jail and you'll stay in jail until the court hearing, which in Nash County can be up to 90 days. No bond until the next criminal court hearing. Stalking real quick. Anybody have any doubt that you don't know what stalking is? You need to read. Stalking is any pattern behavior that is meant to intimidate somebody. It includes written or printed communication, telephone line, transmission, cellular, etc., etc., etc. It can be as simple as leaving a note for somebody on their car every day when you know that they don't want your note. They've told you to leave them alone. I've seen somebody go to jail for stalking for putting a rose on somebody's car every day. They were told, I do not want you to leave me roses, leave me alone. The guy kept doing it. The judge put him in jail. Third bullet point's the key. You knew or should have known that your course of conduct caused a reasonable person duress, emotional distress, and be in fear for their safety. Revenge porn, we're almost through. This came about December 1st, I believe, 2017. Yes, I've dealt with a case of this at Western College. This is as simple as this. You are either given or take an intimate picture of a friend or partner, and you decide against their wishes or will or without their permission to share it with somebody. And you share it for the purpose of causing them, or it actually causes them embarrassment or humiliation. It is a felony in this state. In North Carolina, revenge porn. You take a picture that you have of somebody that you gained legally with their permission or not, and share it without their permission for the purpose of embarrassing them, or it does embarrass them. It's a felony in this state. I say that because a couple of times I've been involved in one of these issues, just athletes involved, shared it with their team buddies. Don't get in that mindset, guys, ladies. Don't get in that team mindset. This isn't a team sport. Quinetta gave her schedule. It's number from my sister's house, ladies. Again, it's posted several places on our website. Call me and I'll assist you in finding any of these resources. And if you have a question about anything we discussed today, the RAIN Network, R-A-I-N-N, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, which is the national clearinghouse for victims of sexual assault and people seeking information on sexual assault. RAIN.org is a tremendous resource. Any questions? Any questions? Last thing. You need to take this serious because it is serious. Almost everything we mentioned, when it's violated, just like this is a life-changing event to a victim, you're the accused in this situation. I promise you, it's going to be a life-changing event. It goes back to making a good decision. It goes back to taking this serious. Now we'll go back to where we started, just for emphasis. You're athletes. Everybody in this room, I believe. We may have a couple of guests. You're athletes. Whether you believe it or not, other students at this college and college across the nation look up to you. You're informal student leaders. 90% of you we're very proud of for the role you take every day in being that informal student leader. Unfortunately, about 10% of you need to catch up. And I mean it like it sounds. Do your part and be smart in what you do. This is the beginning of a long, long journey in life. And athletics is a great place to begin that journey as a young adult. It's a great place to crash and burn if you make bad decisions. And some of these are really, really bad decisions with dire consequences. So again, remember your role as student athletes. Remember the responsibility that NCAA puts upon you. With that said, Dr. Naylor, any more comments?
Thank you, Mr. Sears.
Mr. Director, I'll let you close out.
Thank you all.